How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 156 of Talk4, the Quickfire podcast, where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce an incredible guest for today. Colonel Jason Herring is going to be answering the questions today. So, Jason, Colonel Herring, I am so excited about this. It's going to be a great chat. And like I mentioned before the podcast, it's one thing navigating time zones, but also another thing kind of navigating incredibly busy schedules like these ones. So I'm so glad to have you here today and incredibly excited to ask you these questions. But how are you doing today? Run us through that first.
Yeah, doing outstanding, Louis. Really appreciate you taking the time to be able to chat and discuss a few things that I've learned over my 26-year Air Force career.
I know it's an incredible career. I mean, just digging into it over LinkedIn and on the Air Force website, seeing everything you've done, I'm just stoked about this conversation. It's going to be great. But let's give people the kind of the brief rundown of it, really. So a little bit of an elevator pitch, 1 minute, 2 minutes or so, just a little kind of intro into who you are, what the day job is. Just kind of like a snapshot in the life of you, really. So yeah, what's going on over there, and run us through what goes on.
Yeah. So right now I'm the 621st Contingency Response Wing Commander. And so we're responsible for about a 1,500 member force that executes 4 different mission sets: open the base, air advising, theater command and control, and then joint integration. And so really unique perspective where we're really that kind of 911 force for the joint mobility maneuver. And so that's where my overall background is for the current role. What I've seen is from a growing up perspective. I grew up out there as a farm boy in Virginia and then saw a lot of aircraft flying. And I said, hey, that's something I actually want to do. And I want to continue to serve my country. And so then I joined up and then started off as a T1 instructor pilot down in Columbus, Mississippi. And then finally got the chance to move on into the C-130s. And then after a few wings box cracks and we had to retire those aircraft, jumped over to the KC-10. And then after that, a few years of staff, and then moved out to really learn what the contingency response world does out there at Ramstein. And so a very unique piece to be able to lead as a squadron commander, and then some time out there in Mildenhall leading as a deputy for the Bloody 100th before moving on to this current role. And so really it's been an honor over 26 years and great opportunities not only to serve our nation, but also to really develop a lot of great leaders.
Absolutely. So from my experience on the show, speaking to a lot of fantastic people and great aviators, they always seem to have the passion for aviation come from one of 3 or 4 places: Top Gun, an air show, speaking to a pilot, or family. So which one of those is you, or are you a completely different one?
Yeah, I would have to say it's probably a mixture of seeing Top Gun and seeing a lot of military movies when I was a kid. And I had a grandfather who was in the Navy that was not a flyer, but he was there during World War II, and he always talked about wanting to fly. And then I think the thing that truly inspired me is actually the Navy. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was sitting out on the football fields at practice there in Virginia and watching fighter aircraft fly over as they were preparing for the Gulf War. And so seeing that and saying, hey, that's something I wanted to do, and then getting the inspiration from an Army officer next door to be able to say, hey, I think you should join the military. And so I looked into the options of the Army, the Navy, and then went with the Air Force to try to develop not only that career of flying, but also that continued desire to serve our nation.
Fantastic. So, I mean, like I said, looking at that career, incredibly distinguished career. I would love to just see, because this is a great question that's got a lot of fantastic answers and laid the groundworks for how people develop their leadership and then apply it into their teams. So, any early experiences there that kind of shaped your leadership philosophy getting into the Air Force, or maybe it was kind of outside influences or just experiences, really? Anything there in the early parts of that career that you feel like have maybe shaped your role and kind of given you that trajectory into leadership where you are now?
Yeah, so I think it varies on kind of multiple levels, from not only from a civilian side of what I saw before joining the Air Force, but then also after joining. And so when I look at my time beforehand, we had an Army officer that was our scoutmaster when I was there in just the normal local scout troop, and so he really inspired me a lot to not only a kind of a life of service, but also seeing what it meant to be a military officer. And then watching, my parents, watching my grandfather who was running the farm and how he led, and just being able to kind of pick up on some of his examples from there. And then getting out into the Air Force, I look back, I consider myself to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Uh, and so I think back to each platform that I flew, or everything that I executed, and where you saw solid leadership along the way. So, my time in the T1 as a first assignment instructor pilot, it was number 22 of 23 choices on my pilot graduation list there. But I found so much satisfaction in just being able to take folks out, allowing them to really test their limits, learn a little bit from it, make some mistakes, find out how to recover from that mistake, and then how they would learn and move forward. And so I learned a great deal from that experience. And then moving on to the C-130s, where we were doing mostly combat operations in Iraq, along with some airdrops and some other exercises that we would support once we were back home. Really seeing kind of the ground truth from the C-130s of how you work as a team together. Because as soon as we would land, you might have a full slick cargo platform, and you almost have to reconfigure the entire aircraft. And it wasn't just the load masters in the back; it was the entire team coming out in that hot desert weather to be able to reconfigure the aircraft, get it set up for the next mission. And then, moving on to the KC-10, you started seeing a little bit more of a strategic level at the tanker side, but you also started to understand how the full operational picture worked. In the C-130 days, I always talk to our team about how you build on your experiences from prior opportunities. And so in the C-130s, we were carrying soldiers and sailors, Marines in and out of Iraq, sometimes, injured, sometimes with folks that had paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so we learned a lot of that in the KC-10 world now that I used to parlay in, where we'd fly over Afghanistan and actually be able to dial up the TACP radios, make sure we were listening to see if there was a fight that was going on, so we understood where we needed to maneuver the aircraft to be ready. And so it was seeing that bigger strategic picture about how important it was and the why behind what we did. And then as I looked through it along the leadership side, I didn't see myself as being a colonel, or I didn't see myself ever as being a wing commander. What I did see was a lot of really good leaders, and I saw how they could take care of other members. And so I just kept saying, hey, I can see how I could actually play that role and actually help to take care of our airmen, help take care of our families. And so I've always just kind of thrown my name in the hat until we've gotten to a point where it's no longer a leadership piece that's after that. And so I always try to tell folks, if you never know what opportunities you're going to have, just put your name in and then see what comes out of it.
Definitely. So how did that progression to command look for you then? I had a great conversation recently with General Boussier, and he, very wisely said, any level of command within the military is a true privilege, and it's an incredible thing to be able to do. So how did that progression look to you then? And how did you find yourself to, where you're sat today, basically?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it from a command side was, not everybody wants to do it. And I like I said, I don't know that I fully wanted to do it when I was younger. But as I started to see leaders and what they would do, I can still remember back to Howard Ward, and when I was working as his executive officer. And we went from a squadron of about 200 people to a 400-person squadron, and then we had to decrease back down as we were closing down one of the C-130 squadrons. And as he did that, I was watching how he hand massaged all of the assignments, so that the folks, when they would come in, almost every member that was PCSing or moving from that squadron got their number one choice. A few got their number two, but nobody got below a number two choice. And so that was just his activity of how he was understanding what they needed, and then making sure they were taken care of. And I really saw that, and I kind of took that to heart to go, hey, I need to set myself up and make sure that at least my leaders above me know that, hey, I would desire to be like them. And I had a great squadron commander out in California as well, Joel Jackson, who later went on to be a two-star commander, and how he could continue to work and understand. But he was also that tactical expert that knew how to utilize the aircraft, but also knew how to take care of folks. And then I had some great wing commanders along the way that, I never really aspired to be that. However, I saw some great folks like Lieutenant General Vetri and a few others that really put excellence above a lot of other things and put that excellence into it, and really drove members to perform. Because I think nobody comes into work and says, hey, I really want to screw up today, or I want to do a poor job. But they sometimes need that inspiration to go, hey, you can do better than what you did yesterday. And, I talk to my team a lot about, even I, as a wing commander, I fail on a daily basis of just doing things that I could have done that better. I could have done this better. And so I try to get them to think about, at those little things, go challenge yourself, recognize you're going to fail. But when you do fail, recover from that failure, learn from it, and then move forward. And that's, I think, one of the key lessons I think we have in life is we're always going to have mistakes that we make. Just move on from it and learn from it, and then make it better, but also teach those around you.
I really like it. That's a great statement there. So let's dig into it then. So I'm going to give you the kind of bare bone synopsis of the wing and what you guys do, and then I'm going to leave you to kind of expand upon that and tell me a bit more about it then. So you're the commander of the 621st Contingency Response Wing then. So responsible for a critical mission of opening air bases and responding rapidly to contingencies worldwide. So can you please expand a little bit on that mission set? So what does it look like day to day there? How do you guys do your business basically? And for you too, what's the job description that you're kind of trying to achieve there too? So just a bit more about your job, the mission of the wing, and what day to day looks like there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about my role, and then I'll get into each of the 4 different mission sets and kind of describe kind of how they work towards our national mission. So the first one is, as a wing commander, really what I'm focused on is trying to look 5 to 10 years out. What does this wing look like? What does our mission set look like? How do we make sure that we've got really 3 things: the resources that our airmen need to be able to operate in highly contested environments, the training that those airmen need to be able to execute that mission, and then making sure that we've got the leadership in the right places. Because really, when I look at my job, I had an airman the other day that asked me, hey, what's the legacy, sir, you're going to leave behind? And you could say, hey, I got you this much in resources, I got you this in training. But really, the legacy that we leave behind as a wing commander is who are the leaders that you put in place? How did you develop them? And how do you set them up to continue on with the cultures that we're trying to create in our Air Force, and that mission-focused mindset? Now, as we look into what the wing actually does, it's really a jack of all trades. It's a catch-all. And so, the tagline that we like to use is we turn chaos into order. There's a lot of times that I've seen where we've had some national crisis where folks will come in and go, hey, we really need this one widget, or we need this one type of force to kind of fix this and be that glue. And oftentimes that glue is a member from our wing. And so we have 4 mission sets that we go across that are utilized in a time of crisis. The first one I like to talk about is air advising. And those are we have 2 air advising squadrons that go out and work with partner nations. And so they work with them on not only mobility things of working on the airfield, but they also do some support in Cessna 208s and ISR advising. And so they're really the ones that are gaining that access and influence that we need as a national mission set. Then we move into what's really our largest portion of the wing, and that's the open the base side. And so we'll have 2 contingency response groups, one here at Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, one at Travis Air Force Base in California. And those are your teams that are sitting on alert, that are ready to go at a moment's notice to be able to either open an air base to establish that aerial port of debarkation where folks can start coming in, resetting it. And when you think about it, it's almost like a base in a box. We have about 39 different Air Force specialties that come together as one team to be able to establish that base and really run it. And then we also have our theater command and control team. that will go out and do support in the air operations centers. And they deliver from not only a mobility planning and execution, air refueling, as well as air medical evacuation. And so anytime there's a crisis around where there's additional movements of command and control, you're seeing those teams go into action. And then our last one is our joint integrators, so our air mobility liaison officers, as well as our expeditionary air ground liaison elements. And they'll go out and support our joint partners in the Marines, Army, to be able to help them move together. And so what I love to see now, and this has been one of my biggest focuses as a wing commander, is how do we make sure that we've got unity across all 4 mission sets? Because I'm a huge believer that much like I talked about being a jack of all trades and having a huge breadth of experience across my Air Force career, I don't want them to just work in stovepipes. They have to figure out how their mission sets all work together in a collaborative way to function as one team. Because it's not about the individual, it's about the team and how it comes together.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like a restaurant with a massive menu. It's hard to, make sure you're getting everything's right, but it's your job to do that essentially, isn't it? So from kind of like training perspectives and stuff, and kind of digging into it on that level of looking at how you guys stay at the top of the food chain and, tip of the spear in terms of nailing those 4 mission sets. How does that look? How do you manage it? And obviously, you're an incredible man, but it's too much for one pair of shoulders. So how do you sort of relay the mission and get the guys, on your team as well to sort of support your vision when you've got so many things going on there?
Yeah. It is absolutely, it's a hard thing, but it's all built on trust. All right. We've put great leaders in the places of our squadron commanders, our squadron SELs, or senior enlisted leaders. And then you also see it inside our director of operations for each of the squadrons. Now, what I will tell you and what I like to brag about on our team, over the last 2 years that I've been here in command, our enlisted corps is one of the best in our Air Force. And the reason I say that, that we can actually put that to paper, is the fact that when you look at our enlisted promotions, all the way from senior airmen up to our senior master sergeants, we are normally I think in almost every promotion cycle, we've been above the Air Force average. And that's just a testament to the leadership and the leaders that we have inside our formation. But when you look at it, a lot of what we do is trying to really provide guardrails. And that's the biggest focus I try to do as a wing commander is take the briefings to understand where they're moving in training and have those teams that are the experts in the field describe what they're doing from a training perspective. And then setting up the major wing exercises. For example, right now we're doing what is really phase 6 of what we're calling Unified Devil. And it's been focused on the ability to explode into theater. How do we make sure that when a team comes together, it's not just one organization that's deploying out, but almost half of our entire wing is able to deploy at a moment's notice? And how do we make sure that choreography is taking place to be able to get all those parts and pieces moved out in the right time, in the right sequence?
Nice. I mean, that explains it just perfectly. So on kind of the really nitty gritty sort of scale of this, then if we look at just some of the things people can take away from that too, so you've clearly got a really high performance team there, nailing all of these different mission sets and really on the same wavelength as you as well, and that's the commander. You're obviously doing a fantastic job of maintaining that, and obviously, like you said, looking down the line too, how you're kind of keeping that going into the future as well, making sure it's set up for the next person to fill your boots essentially. But on kind of the actionable scale, what can people take away from that and sort of go and copy and paste in that sense then? So, you've clearly got a great thing going. What are some of the elements that you feel like really contribute to that on sort of a level where people can relate to it a bit too, do you think, and then go and benefit from it?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I've tried to do as a leader is be extremely transparent. I'm very open with our command teams to say, hey, here's what's in my head. And sometimes it might be too much information for them to even listen to, but by explaining the transparency of it and also explaining the why, I think it's been much easier for them to at least understand commander's intent. The other thing I've tried to do is we'll set up key meetings. It's hard having a wing that's spread across multiple different locations to be able to really feel that connectivity. And so twice a year, we'll try to pull all of our squadron commanders together at one location, either in McGuire or out at Travis. And we'll just sit down and go, hey, let's reset. Here's where we're at. Tell me what you're going on, what's going through your team right now, and then have them explain it to the other squadron commanders, the group commanders, the senior enlisted leaders, so that we can all be on the same page with where we're trying to move forward as a team. Other things that I try to do, especially at my levels, have those daily syncs with our group commanders, and then about a monthly sync with our squadron commanders, just where we sit down for a breakfast and we just talk about, hey, what's going on in your life? This is kind of open time. It's not, I don't have any agenda. It's just, tell me what's on your mind. Tell me where you're missing things. How could we support you better as a wing? What's going on in your life? Like, where do you need extra mentoring? And so I've been very keen about making sure that I spend that good quality time with them to answer their questions, and then to provide some guidance if they need it to fill those gaps. And I think that communication piece, we've got so many venues, Teams, we've got BTCs, we've got WhatsApp, et cetera. But really, I think that face-to-face time is so critical, not only in their own development, but it's also key to kind of filling in those gaps in leadership.
Definitely. So from kind of looking at listening to your mission set and everything, so it's clear that you do quite a lot of work, not just at the wing as well. You also go to places and you consult almost in a kind of a weird way. You do consultation in a sense. You work with international partners and stuff too. So on the kind of flip side of that as well, you're obviously a wing that operates at the very high level of what you're trying to do. Have you seen examples of sort of the opposite of that, of leadership and teams that aren't so functional, aren't doing so well, and maybe why that is and everything too? I mean, some of the concepts I've heard in the podcast that create great teams and solid leadership foundations are things like morale, like you said, getting out the office and getting on the personal one-to-one level, things like just generally resilience, consistency under pressure, empowering leaders and people to make their own decisions, and allowing people from the bottom up to speak up and give their ideas and stuff too. So any bad examples of leadership you've seen that could have been improved, that you think that could, ultimately create better environments in the future for other wings?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point. I think we learn a lot, right? We learn some great things from leaders, but we also learn sometimes what not to do from other leaders. And so I think one of the big takeaways I've tried to do and try to commit to our teams is that really drive to kind of understand why, and to listen to some of the grassroots things that are taking place. I'm a huge believer that what we do as leaders, there's a whole systemic approach that's out there. I think back to my own early days of education that, I was a mechanical engineer by trade. I have never used engineering once in my life. However, I have used the training that's out there. And what it taught me was to really look at the why behind what was going on and be able to break it down. I think sometimes folks don't ask enough questions to truly understand what's taking place, and they just say, go do, without the true understanding of how something works. And so I've been very keen with our team that I think other leaders can adapt from is trying to get down to their level to understand what are the challenges they're facing, figure out what it is that we can break free for them as leaders, and then be able to move out. Some of the times that I've seen others struggle is that when they just didn't understand the intent of what the boss was trying to get after. And when you can actually hear the words and you can get the understanding of the why, ask those questions. I try to get into our team, like I truly want loyal dissent. I'm not saying that I will know all the answers as a wing commander. There's a lot that's out there that I do know, but there's a lot of things that I don't. And so what I expect, especially in a small group, is for folks to come online and talk through, like, what are the challenges that they're seeing, what can they do, and then once we've talked about it and I've gotten all the feedback, I've gotten everything, and I can make a decision. Now it's time to make the decision and now move out. But at least allow your voice to be heard prior to the decision being made, and go from there. Other things that I've seen is folks that sometimes stay tucked away in the office too much. Right? There's so much paperwork at our level that we could be doing and working through. But what we've tried to do is really get out and do the walkabouts, go see the teams in the field, get a bigger understanding, so that when we're in the higher level strategic meetings, we can at least counter if there's misinformation. We can bring that out and say, hey, this is actually what you need to do. I saw that in some of the operations that we had taken place, where some planning was going on and it was being discussed, but they didn't have a full understanding of what our team could bring to the fight. And by just having that ability to inject into those meetings to say, look, this is what our team can do, this is how you could actually employ them. What we saw was really some unique things where, you know, a base that we were trying to actually close was closed 6 weeks early because our team was on the ground. And so it's just being able to have that feedback from the teammates and then be able to work through to that. Other areas that I've seen from a leadership is just, I'm a big believer in being credible, but being humble. Be the tactical expert in what you do, whatever that field is, but you've got to be humble in the idea that you don't know everything. And that's where I think folks have failed when they think they know it, but they don't have the full picture behind the scenes.
Gotcha. Makes a whole lot of sense. So can you just entertain me on this a little bit then? So you talk a little bit about opening and closing bases and stuff. And I'd like to just kind of get a picture of just how that looks sort of on the operational scale. So just a few of the details, like what you can reveal, obviously, but time frames, how long does that take? Where do you do this? And how does it look? Like, what's the sort of operational procedure of that? And then why is your team so good at doing it?
All right, so I'll talk a little bit. I'll share with you on the base that I was actually able to lead in the opening. So when I was a squadron commander out in Germany, we opened 3 bases: one in Turkey, one, and then 2 over in Africa. One being down in Niger. And so what it really takes is that initial push onto the ground. And so it's a lot of planning that goes behind the scenes because you have to do the dynamics of what is exactly the force that you require to go in there, what are the capabilities, and then you have to sequence it into what aircraft's going to land first with the equipment, with the people, to be able to make the operation hit. And then once you're getting on the ground, it's getting your communication set up, your base set up as far as where it's going to go, and that initial base defense. And so a lot of the things that you see in the success of that comes in the planning of it to get the ideas, and then to actually run rock drills. We laid it all out when we were opening the base there in Niger. We laid it all out on the floor. We had the screen of how the flow was going to hit, where the defenders were going to go, how the Humvees were going to lay out to be able to provide security when the aircraft came in, how we were going to actually make the first movement to the location where we're going to be established in the base, and then the timelines that we were going to get up and running for the next flow of aircraft and how we're going to coordinate the command and control piece of it. Now, the reason that all works together is all the training and the exercises that take place leading up to it. Because of the fact that we're constantly bringing in new folks, there's a lot of developing a mindset. And you can train on a daily basis, but a lot of what we're trying to do is create a mindset inside of each of our airmen that they know how we're going to work together. They all come with their own specialties, but it's understanding each other's experience, knowing how they're going to operate when they hit the ground, and creating that kind of small team dynamic that we run through not only daily interactions of small training events, but then also larger exercises where we're doing base openings and trying to employ. Another area that we really focus on is that communication. When we were downrange, we didn't have computers up and running. We didn't have anything else. So it was a quick rally at 6 o'clock in the morning, bring everybody together. My SEL, my senior enlisted leader, and I would sit there and start barking out orders of who was going to do what task was it today. And what folks loved about it is you might be a firefighter, but hey, that day you're going to pick up an M4 and you're going to be providing gate security, or you might be a cook for a support services. Well, today you're actually going to go help download cargo on an aircraft that's coming in, because that's the most prioritized need at the moment. And so it's really trying to get that mindset. And what we saw in the airmen is when we did that, they truly loved the mission because they could see the impact that they were having. And it was something that they felt uncomfortable with at first, but truly learned to really gravitate towards that mission set.
Nice. So attack a couple of these if you can, but just kind of looking at the exact, if it's public knowledge, you feel free to share, or just attack a couple or none if it works. But just in terms of some of the stuff that you guys would do then, so would you say that you guys are the kind of first people on the ground or boots down within these bases? Do you know kind of like what you're walking into with all of it? What are some of the dangers and the biggest challenges of the job as well? And just a few things like that would be great.
Yeah, so I think each mission set's a little bit different. And that's, I think, the hardest part for airmen, because you don't always know exactly the scenario you're going to go into. Sometimes you will have had somebody came in prior and did a little bit of the planning on it. Sometimes they're just having to do the planning from a distance. And so it really depends on the theater that you're going into. I'll give you a few examples, from from my time as a squadron commander and the history of that unit, and then I'll bring back to our inside our wing. Um, you know, sometimes there's opportunities where they're going to work with a joint partner, like an airborne force that's going to go in and actually seize the airfield, and then our teams are going to come in right behind after the airfield is seized, and then provide that ability to receive the next set of aircraft, running a landing zone, or if they can't get an aircraft in, running an actual drop zone for it. There's other opportunities where, like the closures in Niger, those bases were already established, and so they flew in there, and then they just kind of did everything in reverse to be able to get out. You also saw folks from our wing that were doing the Afghanistan withdrawal, not only out of Bagram, where they were bringing in all the different fobs and trying to move all the equipment, the cargo, personnel out of there and doing that. But then you also saw it in Kandahar, where we had teammates that were on the ground helping to receive those last people and the Afghan refugees to get them out of the theater. And so there's some times where you do understand the environment because our members have been there, and then there's other times that it's just uncertain. And so what they're trying to do is get the best intelligence they can. And really, that's where I get the most concerned as a wing commander. It's not on the risk to mission, because I know that our airmen will always be able to execute the mission. I'm most concerned as looking at the risk to force, and why I take those briefings at our level to understand, hey, what risk mitigations measures have you put in for the locations that you're going into, and then what are the threats that are out there that we need to be thinking about. And that's why I've been so keen about some of the innovative measures that we put into place of not only getting full connectivity across our force through the radios, but also developing some new technologies for like a counter small UASs, as well as getting the indications and warnings if a threat is going to be placed onto our forces in theater.
Definitely. I think listening to this, my thoughts on it are, it sounds like the glue of the whole thing comes down to communication, essay, and what we spoke about earlier, really, which is empowering the people going out there to effectively, if there's problems with communication, be their own leaders and have that opportunity to step up and take control of situations like that. But I imagine it's very difficult to train for something like this, where it's easy when you train for a situation where it's exactly how you expect it to be. But I think you're someone who could obviously speak on this very wisely, but that never works out exactly like that, right? It all goes out the window when things go wrong, and it always does seem to go wrong somehow in situations like this where it's high stakes and dangerous environments and stuff. But just generally, how the heck do you train for something like that? And I mean that on the practical scale, but also just on the mental scale. So you've got people that you trust going out there who are going to go and perform the right job on an environment that could be anything, really.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my favorite quotes, and I tell the team sometimes, is actually from Mike Tyson, and it's everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so as I look at that, they have to have that plan put together, but they also know it's going to change as it goes through. And so I'll give you a few things. We talk a lot about a mindset. And so what we've actually come up with is we've developed what we call our contingency response tenets. It's kind of like a ethos of kind of what does that mean? And so, we look at that because we're trying to create a mindset with the recognition that you're going to have to adapt to the environment, and you're going to have to change, and you're going to have to shift around when you're on the fly. But it's really about developing that trust through performance, right? Making sure that folks are not only executing in an outstanding manner, but they can develop trust inside that small team dynamic. And then it's also talking about the team being greater than the individual. We come with all our individual skill sets, our individual ideas, how it's all going to work together, but we've got to create that close teamwork to be able to make it happen. We talk about discipline. We try to get the discipline into at the garrison level, how we train, how we exercise here, with the recognition that once we get into theater, that the discipline is going to change because you're going to have to morph. And the last one we're trying to get after is really that holistic warrior mindset of taking care of the physical side, taking care of the mental side, the social side, and then also looking at that piece of the spiritual side, and how does it all work together to make sure that your mindset is ready to go, and that you're the most alert when you're out in the field. I talked to our team a lot about this idea that I heard from one of my mentors years ago, Larry Torres, where he talked about a big thing that when you look at it from an operational perspective is that when you're going through an absence of guidance, you execute until you're told otherwise. And so when you look at this, our teammates are going to go into the field. We've trained them, we've given them the exercise, but we also know they're going to have to deviate once they get out there. They're going to have to understand the operational risks that they're going to have to take, and they're going to have to change up some things to be able to make the mission happen. And that's what we're trying to teach, is not only be disciplined in what we do for our training, but then when you go out into the field, understand the risks, understand how you might have to modify that discipline, that doctrine, those tactics, those techniques, procedures to be able to make sure the mission is executed in a safe way.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Really, really appreciate that. I want to make sure we get the absolute most out of your career and everything too, and just seeing how what is clearly just an absolute expert in your craft here, how some of the other experiences you've had have sort of shaped this trajectory and given you all of this insight into doing such a great job. So a couple of really interesting roles here, strategic and operational. So if I read them out for the people listening in, then so Vice Commander of the Bloody 100th ARW, a division chief in irregular warfare at the Pentagon. So pretty diverse experiences in both combat and strategic environments. Just wondering what some of these things that you learned in those environments too have kind of contributed to what you're doing there at the wing. So clearly, like I said, an expert in what you're doing now, those experiences clearly had a big part to play in it. What were those parts for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I look broadly, I think that the breadth of a career is extremely important. And that's why I'll tell folks, especially coming into our wing, that's very unique. And we are the only contingency response wing in our Air Force. I'll tell them, like, I want you to come in here. You'll be here for about 3 to 4 years, but then you need to leave and go back into the big Air Force, because I need you to take that breadth of experience and then really teach others that expeditionary mindset. I say the same thing about the breadth I've had in my career. I actually love my time there at the headquarters Air Force, of working irregular warfare, but also looking at long range plans and thinking 30 years out, what will our Air Force look like? Because what it did is it forced me to think through bigger picture things. Like, sometimes we look at the tactical pieces, but when you can actually understand what senior leaders are thinking at a strategic level, you can try to figure out how the machine works and how to actually kind of hit those right pressure points to make it move in the right direction. The Transcom liaison officer, when I was working out at AFRICOM, was a tremendous experience, because what I tried to do there was really learn from, we were trying to prioritize AFRICOM's movements, because that's what we're really after is when you're in the mobility world, you're trying to understand what's the priority, what has to go first, how do you create the order. And so I tried to work with the partners there in the AFRICOM staff to understand what they were thinking, what their boss was thinking, but then also to explain to them how the system worked. Because if you can't understand the system, you just get frustrated. You've really got to understand how the full system works, because we've created a tremendous machine as a military, but it's got all these little cogs that if you have one cog that fails, it can create some massive delays in an operation. So you've got to understand how all that comes together. And so that was a great experience of not only coordinating across multiple different directorates, but then also explaining how it works. And then the time over in the Bloody 100th, as you mentioned there at the end, was outstanding. Working with multiple different wings, not only the special forces, but we had a fighter wing, we had a combat support wing, and then being able to truly at that level support an installation to make sure that that all of our operations folks had the right things in place, and that we created a strong culture. Because when you look at what we do at the more senior level, is most of what we're trying to do is create that culture, and that kind of carried forward with me to here, where we had after my first 6 months, I talked to the team about, hey, what's our strategy at the wing level? And so when we were doing that, we came down and said, hey, when we look at this, we've got to build unity across our force. We've got to understand how all these parts work together as a team. And so we created priorities of building a community of ready warriors. And that was really what we laid out, with community being the most important thing of understanding how we're going to work together to execute any mission that we're given.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Another thing worth putting in there and reflecting on as well, to kind of like back up what you just put there as well, is some time at the Air War College. So any thoughts on that experience there as well? Key lessons from there that have influenced you up until now?
Yeah. So the Air War College was a great experience, and it actually was very unique to be able to have some time to work with other Air Force O5s and O6s and to be able to kind of create those relationships that actually carried forward. I didn't expect it to, but the Air Force and the military in general is a very small as you get further up, and so there's a lot of friendships that created the networks that I could kind of share a lot of that. When I looked at professional military education, actually the most important course I think I ever went to in our Air Force was the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies down at Maxwell. And the reason I say that, folks will, when you hear it, it's called a book a day club because it's basically where you're sitting down, you're digesting a book one night, and the next day you're coming in and you're making arguments. And this all lasts in about a 30-day period, and then you move on to the next subject. And so it's a very unique way of laying it out. But it truly, in that course, gave me the ability to articulate and to argue against other kind of ideas or provide counter thoughts. And I think that's one of the greatest things we have in our military is we've got such a diversity of thought that's out there that we're not all going to be right. But when we come together and we talk through those challenges, those problems, much like I talked about at the Air War College, where we could create those relationships, that's where I think the value in all of those programs were in helping us to not only learn, but to think at a higher level and to be able to see problems that are out there.
Definitely. I mean, clearly a multi-pronged attack career that's, like you said, you've gone through a few different things that have shaped one great leadership philosophy that's kind of culminated in what you're doing now. But it sounds like from what you said, it wasn't something you ever expected or you were sure that you ever really wanted, but it sounds like in this career, you've put one foot in front of the other and taken small steps and just made sure you excel at what you do. So it kind of begs the question, where do you see all of this heading, at least for yourself? And then if we kind of look towards that 10-year down the line, look at the wing and everything as well, just a bit of look at the future then. And after this, we're going to talk about kind of youth coming in and we'll dig into that. But yeah, as for now, just the future for you and future for the wing, how that looks.
Yeah. So I think what you're going to see inside the wing is it's going to continue to get lighter, more lean, and then more lethal. That's where we're really trying to target the wing towards, some of when we send out a base opening mission, sometimes it's upwards of about 5 C-17 aircraft that it takes to be able to execute that. And I think what you're going to see is more dynamic employment where we're going to utilize smaller teams. We're going to reduce some of the size of the equipment that we're using, but we're going to put higher technology into it so that it creates greater connectivity and it provides that advice that once the team gets on the ground, they can send information back. And so I think that's where you're really going to see us continue to move, where it's smaller teams going out, doing significant operations to be able to support kind of lily pads or smaller forward operating locations that are there. As far as for me in general, I'm coming up to the end of an Air Force career. I've got our change of command here in about 30 days, and then I'm going to end up retiring and moving back down to the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, and that's just based on a promise I made to my parents years ago that we would come back and run the family farm. And as they've gotten a bit older, it's time to go do that, and then we'll figure out how we actually continue to develop community in the local area and back towards my local hometown. And so that's really where we're headed, but continue to be a staunch advocate for what we're doing as an Air Force, as well as what we're doing inside the Contingency Response Wing.
Fantastic. I mean, it's an honorable mission, and I'm excited for your future. I know that you're always going to do good things and have a great impact in your community as the leader that you are. And if we talk about some of that leadership stuff, then for people, the youngsters, I mean, it's where it's all based, right? Everything, the future of all of it, the next wing command and the one after that and the one after that, it starts in the youth coming into this industry and the military in general then. So if we kind of, stir the pot in a mix of reflections back, but also foresight to the future, how do you prepare for that future while taking some of the best lessons you've learned from the past too and creating essentially fantastic leaders?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, as you look at it, what I didn't realize as a wing commander, how much I was going to actually have to teach. And so I say that jokingly. I thought that, once you got to this level, it was going to be a lot more things that were kind of moving out and just working through and you just kind of manage a few things. And what I've found is I have to do a lot more advising and as a teaching role. And I think it just wasn't something I was aware that I was going to have to do, but I think it's almost showcases really how important my role is to be able to really take that next generation all the way down from some of our flight commanders to our squadron commanders to the SELs, and how do we develop them so that they can not only think through the challenges that they might face in the future, but really build that next generation. What I will tell you is the generation behind me is so much sharper at how to use technology, how to integrate. What we really have to do is pass on some of those stories. I hate to say it, but sometimes there's those stories you got to pass on. That's kind of, so there I was, because what you're trying to get across is um, providing the advice and the experience that you've had where you've made mistakes and then you've recovered from it, or you learned from it. Because what we're trying to do, at least at our level, as I'm working with the squadron commanders, is when I hear things that they're trying to do, is discuss with them and going, yep, I've seen that done that way. It didn't work as well. If you do it this way, it probably will be much more effective in it. And so it's trying to have that idea that we're teaching the next generation of leaders, while also at the same time really giving them a bit of intent and then letting them go out and execute on their own. I'll give you an example for one of our teams that went down and did a base opening mission. It was, hey, I'm here to make sure that you get out the door. And then once that member got out the door, I made a call to the commander that was going to be on the ground that they were going to work for. And I said, look, if you listen to this member, he's coming in, he's going to lead you to victory. All you got to do is just listen to his advice, because we've trained him here. He's going to be spot on. And then we went hands off until they recovered back home. And I think that's the vision that we have to set up, is giving that clear commander's intent, that mission command, and then let them execute, because they are the magic, and they're going to make the mission happen. Other things that I want to pass on to the next generation is really this idea that it's got to be a family business in the military. It's a tough life for members, especially if your family is not acclimated or accustomed to you being on the road, or having those times where you've got to get out. And so what I tried to do was really pull the families in on Friday events, or if I had to come in on a Saturday and do some work, bring the kids in with me, so that they could actually get a perspective on it, so they understood where mom or where dad was going to be, or why we had to leave at crazy hours or in the middle of the night. Because I think by doing that, it helps develop that resiliency in the families, so that we have less stress when we're as members going on the road, deploying and executing our nation's mission. Another area I kind of look at is trying to keep driving home this idea of service. I talk about it. We've only got about 1% of our nation that raises their right hand to serve, and so not only thanking them for it, but having them think through what it means to actually serve. Because there's a lot of, I don't care how long you serve, whether it's 3, 4 years, 20 years, it's not a big deal to me. The fact that you raised your right hand and said, hey, I'm going to serve is critical. And then what we also try to do is get that mentality of, hey, when it's your time to actually exit the service or exit the military, that you actually go out and serve your community. Because I think that's one of the things that we as citizens is so important, that we continue to pass on this idea of serving someone else, than just meeting our own individual needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I see quite commonly within youngsters nowadays, when I say young, I mean, it's people around my age too, just those early 20s and those late teen years and stuff too, where I think there's a growing pressure where people feel like they have to have it all figured out, and they need to know what it is they're doing. They need a career path, and they want to understand it, and they can't take a bit of uncertainty and stuff too. And I just think, because we've got you here and your career has kind of done that sort of I wouldn't say confused, but you didn't exactly know where you wanted to go with it, but you just did one thing and then progressed on from there. So, and kind of like career paths for people in the future as well. When is it okay to not really know where you're going with all of it? But also, when do you need to have a very direct vision and a clear, A to B or A to Z in a career, in the military especially?
Yeah. It's funny. My wife always tells me, she's got a good line, that you got to fake it till you make it at some points. We talk about it from our leaders. We just had a great senior NCO induction ceremony, and we discussed the fact that, hey, you're moving up into the next level. You're not going to know everything. You're actually going to be stressed. It's an okay thing. Having some stress actually makes us grow. If everything in life is easy, you're never going to learn from it. And I think that's what I've loved about just all the different changes that the military has provided. I feel blessed in doing multiple different aircraft because I made mistakes along the way, but I was able to learn from it and overcome it. And so I think what to the point you're trying to make that I think is extremely valid. We used to have a society where folks would work one job and they would almost move up in that career the entire time. We no longer have that. I think right now, on average, members are working at a job from somewhere from about 2 years to 3 years, and they're moving on to something else. And I think what we've really got to get the mindset of is that change is an okay thing, and there's going to be some stress with it. I watch it in our own kids. I grew up in the same house my entire 18 years, and my parents didn't move out of that house until about roughly 10 years ago. And so I had a very stable platform when I grew up, whereas my kids have moved every two, sometimes 1, sometimes 3 years. The last 3 years we've moved every summer, but that's created some different dynamics of how to work through it. And I think what it really drives into is also we as more senior folks, we have to talk about the positive things that are out there, because I think you can, if you carry through and you just kind of take an Eeyore approach where everything's negative and it's just woe is me, how's this going to work? It really can kind of wear down on you. But if you look at the differences and you go, hey, let's look at the positive side. Hey, we're moving to this location. We're going to make new friends. We're going to now have friends in that location. We're going to find a new job. We've got to go figure out what restaurants we're going to want to enjoy. But you flip on it and say, we're going to get a whole different kind of culture of restaurants that we've never seen before, that we would have ever experienced had we not moved. Similar things, right? If you don't change jobs or you don't change getting to a higher responsibility, you will have never had that experience to actually go and learn from it. And I think that's one of the things I've loved about life is you're constantly on a learning trajectory of just getting something new. And even now, as I get ready to prepare for retired life, I'm going to be in a learning process of, hey, what's it mean to do this? What's it mean to do that? And it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to work as a family to overcome it all. As you look back through, like I've thought about my entire military career, and where I actually learned the most, or I created the most connectivity and relationships, was actually when it was really hard. Meaning, like you're out in the middle of nowhere, 116-degree heat, just nastiness, but you bonded together as one team. And so I think that when you look at that, that's something that we sometimes we want to steer towards the easy things in life. We want to do, hey, let me take this route. But it's when we really, what I like to call, embrace the suck, and when we lead boldly through that suck, that it really makes us the best individuals that we can be. And that's, I think, where I've seen the not only the sharpened relationships, but the sharpened skill sets, along with just the ability to build a community relationship with our fellow men and women in that profession of arms is so critical to what we do. I think back to the easy times. We had some great experiences traveling all around the world. Good friends, but my closest friends are the ones that I sweated with, that I was stressed with, that I went through a lot of pain with, and that's really where I think you get the most value, and that we sometimes try to stay away from. But that's where we almost have to challenge ourselves to really go through those hard times to be better leaders.
I love it. I think that's a really nice place to wrap it up. Then that's a great sentiment, and I love the look at the future you have there. I think it's going to benefit a whole lot of people listening in. So if we go into a bit of the shameless plug, we've got through those 4 questions, but now is that sort of time to direct people to the stuff that matters the most and where people can kind of learn more. So whether that's about the wing, looking into career paths, or joining in, or just generally promoting the mission or doing good within society, what are some of those things that you'd like people to go and take a look at right after this podcast, and at least consider for the future when thinking about their futures and how they can have an impact potentially?
Yeah, so I'll definitely give a shameless plug to our wing. It's a very unique organization that it actually stresses a lot of folks when they come into it, because they're not sure. I go through and I read all the comments and feedback, and a lot of folks feel stressed. And I always wonder, is it because we're on the road too much? Is it the dynamics of the mission? And I think a lot of it is they're doing something that's outside of their comfort zone. But as they get to that 3 to 4 year point where they've worked as those kind of multi-capable airmen, they figure out how to integrate together. It's really developed their relationship side where they can see a bigger picture and they can understand the eaches to how we work as a society. And I think there's a greatness to that, and why I love what the contingency response mission does, but also the citizens for our nation that it really develops. But my shameless plug, if you will, is really about going after service. And I think that's I'm looking back as I get ready to retire, and my wife was talking about, hey, what are you going to talk about in the retirement ceremony? And I talked about just being thankful and realizing how much of a blessed life I've had as a military member, and just a blessing of being able to serve a nation. And so I think that concept is something that we've got to continue to carry forward. I talked to the teams about a book called Democracy in America sometimes, and I'll sell it where it's Alex de Tocqueville, and he wrote it in the 1850s. But what he looked at was why fires in a certain nation in Europe burned so much easier versus fires inside the America. Why did they actually get put out faster? And what he found was when the fires in Europe, you had a professional force that would come in there, but sometimes they couldn't get there in time, and that professional force would fight it, but the buildings would burn. But when he came to America, you'd have a lot more fires. But what he saw was when a fire broke out, the entire community came out together. And so I think that is an idea of building that service mindset, but also building that community mindset is really what we need as a local thing, because so much happens in the local area, but we've got to work together as one team to be able to get the best out of each other. And so that's my biggest takeaway.
I love that. That's really great. Well, Colonel Herring, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you today on the Talk4 podcast. And I think I just want to say as well that, as you said, 1% of the people of the nation put their hand up and serve. It's an honor to be able to speak to some of those people, and especially you today. But I want to just highlight quickly as well to the people listening in that, it appears when you watch and listen to these podcasts that it's like one person. So it's myself and Colonel Herring here today, but really it's taken an army, and I'm aware of that too. When you think about it, really it's taken incredibly professional public affairs officers to make this happen, an approval process that involves lots of cogs and moving parts, people right now covering for Colonel Herring here as well, to do some of those tasks so he can be here and have this conversation and promote these things and leadership as well. So I think I just want to say thank you for your service, and I want to say thanks to the whole wing as well, and the whole Air Force really, and the whole military, because it takes an army, but it all comes from the individuals. And it's a true honor and makes me very proud to be able to do this. And it's been a great podcast, so thank you, and everyone else from the wing who made this possible too.
Louis, no, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about our mission set, but also to sit down and just talk from a leadership perspective. Really appreciate what you're doing to spread just some thoughts and ideas of what it means to be a better leader, because I think it's an important part for our society. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, all I can say is it's a true honor to be able to do that, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as there are people at the back end of it listening. And even when there aren't, I think I'm still going to do it because I enjoy it a whole lot. But thank you guys for listening. This was episode 156. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. If you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit the subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now. See you in that next one. Cheers.